if you're looking to get more engagement and more reach with your posts and have more effective marketing, let me ask you, what's been the thing that's allowed you to follow other people? For all the people that you love following, love engaging with, what's the underlying factor? What's the underlying current? I'm sure you can see. At some level, they had effective, conscious communication that resonated with you. They had they said something in a video or wrote something in an article or blog that resonated with you. So the question is, are you doing the same for your marketing? Are you effectively and consciously going into your communication and saying, what is it that I need to do that lands with my audience? Or are you doing what most struggling business owners are doing, just doing the spray and pray kind of marketing, just hoping something lands? Well, that's why we have Wendy Corner here. Wendy's going to walk you through all the tips, tricks, advice on how you can effectively work on your marketing in a way that's conscious, and as a way that she describes as conscious communication. So what you're going to learn here is, one, why it's so goddamn important to work on your effective communication. Two, how to present your communication consciously in a way where people actually hear what you're saying. Three, you're going to learn the 7 pillars of conscious communication. And 4, how to overcome all of the fears with getting out there and sharing your message. Let's dive in. Hello, my online family. Welcome back to another episode of the Awaken Your Business podcast. I have Wendy Corner here. We're going to discuss everything in terms of conscious communication. And of course, if you're in business, this is one of your main focus. This is really the key. I always share my clients, before we talk about vibration, when we're talking about the business side of things, I think 80 to 90% of your success is coming from your communication and coming from your offer. And if you aren't consistently working on your communication, working on your messaging, working on your niche and saying, okay, is this aligning with the people? Then you're basically just putting some spaghetti on the wall and just seeing what sticks. And it's not a very effective manner in which you're able to create a business that's aligned and in a way that is profitable. And so, Wendy, I'm going to read out your bio in a second, but it's a pleasure to have you here, and it's a pleasure to have you in the serving circle and everything you do for us. We definitely appreciate it. But I'll quickly read your bio. So those who don't know you, first of all, what the hell? Second of all, you can understand a little bit more about her. So Wendy Corner. So with a background in speech pathology, Wendy created her startup company, gaining international exposure and recognition, assisting those in leadership positions to create presentations to grow and scale their impact and influence. So her clients from all across the world have been able to increase their confidence and influence in their conversation, and as a result, be headhunted for key roles, negotiated significantly higher bonuses for their staff, and secured financial banking when the company was on the line, delivered at TEDx. So Wendy uses accelerated learning techniques to re-engineer your message in a way your target audience can hear and wants to hear. So she works in a done with you and done for you approach to craft that ideal message to market. So drawing from her years as a speech pathologist to deliver it in a confidently for maximum impact and influence. So if you're all about impact and influence, this is for you. So Wendy, how are you doing?
I'm very well. Thank you, Tyson. Thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure. So I'll give you the space right now to share. How did you get into all of this? Obviously, it's a key aspect of business. It's something that business owners know they need to work on. How did you get into all of this work in mastering this within yourself?
Okay. Well, come with me on a journey back to a little 2-year-old. Back in the 60s, giving my age away there, parents were not allowed to stay in hospital with their children. And I had to have surgery. So I remember the double doors closing when I was only 2, with my mother on one side and me on the other. I remember screaming for my mum, and she didn't come for me. At that point, I gave that meaning that my voice didn't matter, that I didn't matter. That meaning that I attached to that, that story that went with that feeling, has coloured life from there on in. As a teenager, I was considering what I wanted to be when I grew up, what I wanted to do when I left school. And I always wanted to do something vaguely medical and didn't quite have the know-how to do the maths, physics, and chemistry required for medicine. Okay, what was I going to do instead? I know, I'll be a speechy, because that way I'm working with people with communication, which is something I've always done. I mean, I even devised my own language when I was a child. So we had that was what came out of it. I was going to be a speech pathologist. And then it's only in hindsight that I've reviewed with the meaning that I put to that original incident, that my voice didn't matter. And I was jolly well going to make sure that everybody else's voice did matter. So not only was I working as a speech pathologist, but I was also working with people who had disabilities, who really were minority, who really were not able to be heard unless somebody supported them to do that. So that's the background that I've had for nearly 30 years as a practicing speechy. I then came over to Australia and decided, you know what, there's more to this than what I'm actually doing. I was gently kicked out of the nest into coaching, and then thought, well, what is it that I'm really good at? What am I really passionate about? And that was where the conscious communication idea came from, because that's where we're going with business. If you can be very clear about how you're communicating to your ideal audience consciously, so everything aligns. And as we know, it's all about the alignment between head and heart. And if I can just carry on for 2 seconds longer, Tyson, where does the energy go between head and heart? Through your voice. So that's where I came to this position from.
Powerful. What does it feel like to you when you're speaking from head and heart, when you know you're integrating those energies and it's coming through your voice? What does that feel like? How does someone know when that is aligned for them?
It flows. It flows, and also the resonance of your voice is easy. There's not the tightness, there's not the clipped tones or the edge on the voice. I don't know whether you can hear the difference now, because what I've done is actually tighten the muscles around here. So when you are in flow, when head and heart match, you're all in alignment, the voice flows, the resonance is there. And your clients or your audience are going, she gets me. She's speaking my language. And that connection, that rapport, that deep connection is there.
Totally. And for everyone who's listening, maybe to even review a time in the past where they've heard a message, they've heard some communication, written or verbal, that they knew was resonating with them, where they had that same response in themselves that said, this person gets me. And reviewing that in their head and saying, okay, well, that's a time when I felt that. How can I portray that within my audience? Right? That would be really cool. So what are some things in which people can ask themselves to start on this journey? Let's say they're a coach or they're a business owner and they're starting to get their message out there, and they've played around a little bit with their languaging and how they're meant to do their marketing on social media and these sort of things. What are some key ways that you work with clients in just starting out and getting on this journey of being more conscious with their communication?
Sure. Well, I have a framework which I've called the 7 pillars of influential communication. And the first question we ask is, what's your purpose? Why is this so important to you? And if you can nail that in your head, why am I saying this? Why is this business so important to me? And why is my message therefore really important to the people? You've got to get that first. And I do an exercise with my clients. I don't know if you've come across the 7 levels of why. Dean Graziosi does the 7 levels of why.
Yes.
So we dig in deep. Yep. What is your bedrock reason? And actually, I did this on a call the other week, and we got down to 9. We kept going. So What is the purpose? Why are you doing this? That has to come first, because that's going to be your North Star. That's going to hold you there when the brown stuff hits the fan, like nerves and everything else. Then you also are required to know who you're talking to. And that's very critical, because if you know who your ideal audience is, as we've already said, Tyson, your messaging has to be directed to that person. And when you know who they are and what their issues are, how are they languaging it? How are they describing what they're saying in their heads, or maybe typing into Google in the wee small hours? What are those individual words and phrases? Because if you can use those back to the client, back to your audience, you've got such a deep level of rapport, because as you say, they say, you get me. Tell me more. How can I work with you? You're literally speaking their thoughts back to them. So those are the two very important ones to start with.
Okay. So they're the starting two pillars. Is your purpose.
So we have purpose and then people. You can imagine these all seven have the alliteration. They're all beginning with P.
Great.
So we have purpose, we have people.
Yeah.
Then we have pain/gain. What is their problem? Where are they wanting to go? Then we come in number 4 with the power. How are we using our voice? This is where we start doing more on the delivery, the artistry, if you will. Up until then, we've been doing the science background.
Yeah.
Then we can start to how do you use your voice? Because as a rough guide, you're looking at about 40% of what you're saying is delivered vocally. Then we go on to physiology. Roughly 50% is dealt with visually. So that's how you use your facial expression, your hands. And if you're on Zoom, you can gesture down here all you like, but nobody can see it.
Yeah.
Where do you do it? Where is that thing? And there's also the thing about personal space. You can have invading personal space on Zoom just as you can in real life. So things about the physiology. Then we have presence. Number 6 is about presence. And that's something that's probably easier to define by its absence than its presence. Every pun intended. You know when somebody's not with you. But boy, do you know when somebody is fully present to you. And that's really important as a speaker. It's great on a one-to-one. It's harder to do when you have a group there, but there is a way of doing it. And then the 7th pillar is the performance, bringing it all together. And that's where we look at some of the more technical stuff. So if you're doing Zoom stuff, what about your lighting? Do you have a green screen? Where are you standing in terms of the distance between you and the frame? Where are your hands going? What's your microphone like? If you're on stage, things like mic packs. Ladies are notoriously bad at thinking about, where am I going to put the mic pack? I've been on stage in the past with the mic pack attached to a very strong piece of elastic on my knickers. Not fun. I'm just sort of gently putting that out there. Gentlemen tend to have pockets. We ladies tend to forget that. So little stupid things like that may not be considered. And how to get on stage in terms of your staging, your presence, how you use the stage, all of that sort of craft work is the 7th pillar of performance, bringing it all together.
So I think wrapping up these 7, it'd be good for someone to recognize where the areas are that they can benefit the most in exploring, right? So whether it's the purpose, the person, who you're talking to, whether it's the pain and the gain of understanding, their motivations, power, that's how you use your voice, then physiology, how you move and use your body, personal space, of course, is a big part of the physiology as well. Presence is number 6, and then the performance in general. So the lighting, the microphone, the stage, how you use that sort of equipment, these sort of things. So people can start to look and say, okay, where is an area that I can focus on most? Now, do you go through all 7 in order when you're working with someone to start to nail down these sort of platforms?
We certainly do the purpose first.
Okay.
That has to be first, and then we do the people. I mean, what I'll do, Tyson, I've actually got an infographic on this, so I'll send that to you. You can pop in with the show notes as well.
Cool, done deal.
Yeah, purpose has to come first, because that's your building block, that's your fundamental. This is where I'm starting from. And then if you know who you're talking to, because you can, as you put the spaghetti, spray and pray, how do you know it's going to meet with your audience's needs? I mean, you said in the bio intro, it's matching speaking in a way that your audience can hear and wants to hear. And that is not just around business communication, that's around all communication. So you got teenagers, you want them to clear their room. How are you going to say it in a way that's going to make sense to them and it's going to be meaningful for them and they get something out of it?
Have you done that before?
Not with teenagers because I don't have any, but yes, I have worked with parents who who are speakers and they've gone, actually, I can do this with. I mean, I did that in part of my clinical work because I was working with parents who were teenagers, particularly autistic children. And we got great breakthroughs because suddenly it made sense to the teenager. Well, why would I do it unless they've got something out of it?
Great. Well, what's the example there? What's the example for a kid who needs to clean their room? What can the parent do to shift their communication in a way that benefits the kid?
What's going to be motivating to the child, adult, young person? What's going to be motivating to them? And then you use that as the, if you like, the carrot. I mean, I've had people say to me, but that's bribery. And I've said, tell me, do you go to work out of a sense of duty, or do you happily pick up the paycheck at the end of the month? Well, it wouldn't work if I wasn't getting paid. Could that be looked at as bribery? And when they look at it from that frame, they go, oh, okay. So it's finding something that's going to motivate, that's going to inspire the other person. And that's about knowing your audience, what makes them tick, what are their drivers. And again, this is where we go pretty deep into our ideal client. So your avatar, your ideal client, call them what you will, you know who they are. You get inside their skin, inside their head. How do they think? What's going to motivate them? And then you tap into that and then job done. Well, of course I'm going to do that. I can see there's a purpose to it.
Totally.
It's not always your purpose.
Wow. So we're focused on most with our purpose. Why am I saying this? Why am I sharing this? Why do the audience need to hear it? Why is this so important? So going down those layers of ask yourself, why is this? Why? And getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And then once you're starting to study your audience, I'm keen to ask you, what are some ways in which people can learn about their audience? Because I know there's so many different ways people can understand their avatar and their niche. What are some ways in which you suggest that anyone who's listening wants to learn more about their niche and audience? What are some exercises, some steps, some things that they can do to get those answers? Sure.
Have a vague idea to start with, at least. I tend to suggest that people go for a common theme. Some people will go for gender. Some people will go for when I was talking to Trish Bishop a couple of weeks ago, and she was talking about energetic footprint, so energetic signature rather. So that could be your common thing. But whatever it is, you're going to have to narrow it down a bit, because spraying and praying doesn't work. The idea is that you're talking to, from my perspective, you're talking to one person about one problem and how you can solve it. If you're that clear, you can get into their head. As I said, you know, my avatar document is a lady who is in her 50s. So I've got a 10-year border around it. She's a lady who's feeling as though time's running out. And I've listed lots and lots of criteria for her. Now, I've actually been in a room where this avatar idea was talked about, because people were going, well, if I go to one person, I'm actually excluding so many others. Well, with that frame in mind, ahead of this session, we were all sent somebody's avatar document. It was 6 pages long. It went into the psychographics as well as the demographics. And we were all asked to highlight things that made sense to us, things that resonated to us. Now, that room had all walks of life. We had ages, I think we had from 18 up to 80. We had male and female, we had gender orientations, we had spirituality orientations, we had people from employed, entrepreneurs, a very big cross-section. And every single one of us had highlighted something, more than one thing actually, in this allegedly one-person document. So if I hadn't seen that with my own eyes, I probably wouldn't have believed it. But by niching down, by really being clear on who you're talking to, that clarity gives you a sense of authority and credibility. And then if you like, your ideal person is in the middle of the bullseye, you're actually picking up people around the periphery, around the edges, because you're so clear. They will come in on some of it. They may not be your absolute ideal bullseye, but they will pick up on so many things that they like about you, they trust about you, because you're so credible, because you're making sense to them. And that's where I go with the avatar. The other thing to do is then not just think about, when we're talking about the psychographics, what are their needs? What are their drivers? And what's the emotional language that they're using to describe that? And I've got various templates and things that I get my clients to work through, so that they can take that observer role, take that step back and go, okay, let's look at this from their perspective. How are they feeling about it? Because the feeling words are where we really pick them up.
Mm-hmm. Love it. And so do you do market research on search engines or books or, blogs and articles? Where is it that you find these answers once you know your niche and you get a little bit more specific about it? Mm-hmm. What is it that you recommend to find these answers and to start to do that market research piece?
Sure. Well, one of the things I've seen and experienced myself is, when you know who you are, who your ideal audience is, where do they hang out on socials? Are they in Facebook groups? Are they in LinkedIn groups? Are they on Insta? Where do they hang out? If they're on Facebook groups, I can particularly talk to that one. Look at the groups they're in. See what is getting noticed. What is the language that is being used? And it's not just in the posts, it's in the comments. Because it's when if somebody's put up a post that's got lots and lots and lots and lots of engagement, it's hit a nerve. What are people writing underneath? Look at the language, do some data mining on this, and keep a record. I've got a spreadsheet actually of words that are almost buzzwords, if you like, because those are the words that you then use in your copy, in your working, in your verbal stuff as well, because those are the words that people are using. I said it's back to exploring people's thoughts out loud. I've also done surveys, questionnaires, if you will, which have a combination of ticky boxes, because nobody likes to see one which is open-ended questions, because it's going to be too much. To do a combination, the ticky boxes of things that you perceive are already important, and specific open questions, because again, those open questions that require you to do writing will actually give you the language from their perspective, not yours.
Very important. Very important. So you're doing your market research for Facebook groups, especially when you're not necessarily looking at the post, but the comments. Right?
Combination. If you've got a post that is really popular, that the actual post will have made sense.
Yeah.
So that will be something that sparked people's interest. And then, yes, look at the comments. So it's a combination. What was said, because that's been enough of a hook. So there will be something, and if you're talking copywriting, that'll be enough of a that's important. Now, what's been said as a result?
Okay, gotcha. How do you know when you're specific enough? Because I know many people are messaging around with their niche, and they're messaging of, this is who I help and this is how I help them. How do you know when you started to nail that and you started to say, okay, maybe this is specific enough and it's landing and it's doing the right things? How do you know when you get to that piece?
You can niche forever. The thing is, at some point you've got to go, let's do this. Does it work? Are you getting the interaction? If you are, yep, go with it. And the thing is that you may not have reached it now, but by working with the clients that you're there. I mean, originally, I was saying that I work with women to improve their communication skills so they can speak their truth to millions. My message is getting to the women who are then prompting their men to go, you need this. So from that perspective, I'm still going to carry on because it's the women who are going to be picking up my message and they're going to be prompting their menfolk. So I'm happy to work with male or female. Mm-hmm. But that's where so I can give you an example of, just because you think you've got there, keep working on it, but don't go at it forever after until you launch, because you'll never get going.
Okay. Yeah. So a couple of key takeaways here. Get to the point where you need to put the message out there and you need to listen to the feedback. Yes. Right. Because it may be surprising. You may get some surprising insights from what your audience is saying, and then to just consistently test and tweak depending on the feedback. Is that what you're saying?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, the other thing is, for me, particularly, as I said, as a conscious communicator, I'm looking at the energetic connection and having the presence and the power to say, actually, you're not the right fit for me, but I know somebody who I can introduce you to. Now, that's not to say that you're dumping them on somebody else, but you can perceive at a deep level that it's not the right fit for you. Because the thing is, if you take on somebody who's not the right fit for you, it's going to be an energy vampire situation. And that's not good for you as a business owner. And you're not going to be serving your client. So that's the other thing I would caution people to think about. Not just, as I said, not just about the demographics and the psychographics, but what's the energetic connection as well. Yeah.
And I know you touched upon it, but what's your advice? What's your sell for someone who is scared about niching, scared about going too specific, and their language might be too broad, might be too vague, where it's not really landing with anyone, but they just don't want to cut anyone out. They just don't want to, they're like, oh, I'm not too sure what my specific niche is or specific message is. That's where I find that the biggest hurdle is. Someone's like, well, I don't know how to niche down. I don't know what to focus on. What do you think some of the fears are there? And what's some advice of someone you have? What's some advice you have for someone who's in that confusion stage?
Sure. FOMO, I suggest, is the biggest problem there. I don't want to exclude anybody. I don't want to miss anybody out. And that's a lovely space to come from. However, we don't all like the same flavor of ice cream. You're not going to be right for everyone. And unless you are clear, and you can test and measure this, you can test and tweak, as you say, and it may be that you've narrowed it down to 2 or 3. And in that case, you're going to have 2 or 3 specific messages. That's an awful lot of work. So what I would suggest then is try one. You haven't excluded the others. You're going to come back to them. You're still keeping, as you say, a loving, safe space for them. But go with one of them. Focus on that. Get your messaging. Does it land with them? And try that one first. And if that one doesn't work, okay, let's look at the next person. If you try and do all things to all people, you're not going to get anywhere. It is the spaghetti on the wall.
Totally. So this is also what was said to me, is that a lot of people who are struggling with their message, they struggle niching down because they don't want to disregard anyone, and they don't want to have few clients. They don't want to have people come to them and then they say, oh, that doesn't resonate with me. So they're scared of losing clients. Yeah. But they're scared of losing the clients they don't have. They don't have any clients right now. Right. Yes. They don't have much to lose because they don't have many clients flowing through. They don't have a consistent flow of leads. And so that is where I say you have nothing to lose by going more specific and saying, okay, what is a message I can test out just to see what's going to happen here? What might be a really good fit for my audience? Let's focus more on a specific niche, more on a specific challenge, more on a specific outcome and transformation that they may be asking for, and then see if it lands, see if it resonates, see what feedback you can get, and test and tweak after that. Right? Is that what you would recommend? And again, it's also,
sorry for interrupting, it's also definitely from the perspective of this other person. Because I can tell you I'm the best thing since sliced bread. However, if you don't like bread, that's no point. So it's, again, it's putting yourself in the position of the other person. Whoever you decide to try out. It's like an act, be like a method actor. Put on the other person's character. Live in their shoes. What is it that's irking them? What is it that's causing them that pain? And how are they describing it? And as you say, if you don't know, you've got nothing to lose. You're not going to lose anybody if you're in that broad situation. So method acting, darling.
Yeah. And I think it's important what you said before as well. It doesn't mean you can't help those who are outside the niche. It doesn't mean you can't help that, you know, someone who just comes to you and says, look, I'm not sure if this is me, but this is what I think you can help me with. Of course you can help them. It's just you go specific with your communication, right?
Yes.
That's a very big difference. And even when you are very specific with your communication, specific with your niche and your avatar and, you know, the challenges that you solve, like you said, it'll start to pick up people around the edges as well, around the edges of that target, because you've been specific to start with.
Yes.
Right. So absolutely. I think that's something that people can think about. Okay, how can I get more specific? How can I make it more clear? How can I make this more compelling? And put that in my communication. But what do you think is the next piece? Once someone is more specific, is it to go down into understanding more of their language, more of their pain points and what it is they're after? Is that where you sort of go next in exploring that niche? Yeah,
because as I said, if you're inside the skin of the other person, you knowing what is it that's driving them, what are the needs that are unfulfilled at the moment, and so what's the motivation? I mean, we've got some fairly basic needs. I mean, you're familiar with Tony Robbins' 6 human needs of certainty, uncertainty, love and connection, significance, growth and contribution. Somewhere in there, what they're missing is missing. So what is it that they will gain from you if you tick those boxes? The other thing that I also work with is looking at making sure that the message includes visual words, auditory words, kinesthetic words, what I call the thinky words, the auditory digital, from an NLP perspective, because we have different ways of perceiving, different ways of thinking and processing. So those words are required to bring in, unless you know a very specific person that you're working with. A lot of my guys tend to be visual. So they're short, sharp bullet points. Don't give me long stories. I'm not interested. They're not details focused people. They're big picture people. So if I was to go in with giving them chapter and verse and a lot of story around it, I've lost them. Bored, move on. And we do only have 4 seconds to make an impression these days. It used to be 7. It's gone down to 4.
Damn.
Because we're so used to
3 seconds.
Swipe, swipe, swipe. So that's why it's important to get that right off of the bat hook.
Okay. Well, what's a way in people can find that answer? So if they have their niche, how do they find out if their person is more auditory, more kinesthetic, more visual? I know the vast majority of people are more visual, and you're saying to add those 3 words, but also how do you start to understand more of your communication of how you can craft it towards their perspective? How do you find those answers?
One of the things I do is when I'm working with clients, I'll put it out, just ask them, so where in my messaging did I get you? Where did you think, yep, she's got me, that was the pivotal point? And look at the language around that. If you're on stage, this is where it gets really tricky, because you've got to do things on multiple levels. As well as remembering what you're saying, you're scanning the audience, what worked, what landed. On a one-to-one, that's much easier, clearly. But again, it's in inhabiting the ideal client. And if your ideal client is a visual person, then that's what you predominantly go with. Yeah, you throw in a few of the other words by the by, because that's picking up the peripheral people. But you focus on the person that you're really working with. And that, I said in the bio about negotiating significant bonuses. One of my clients, because she knew that her audience were all visual, and she herself is an auditory person, she can yarn, for goodness sake. However, she knew that on that occasion, she had to cut it right down Actually, she did a PowerPoint. She gave bullet points, and they all went, yeah, that makes sense. I'll vote for you. And her staff got the bonuses and not the other guys, because she knew her audience. Make sense?
Totally. And where would you say, is there a difference in using this language if someone is to do a video or a Facebook Live compared to written, if they're doing written posts, if they're doing blogs, or even compare that to doing a podcast where they might not even be seeing you and they're just hearing your auditory? Does some of this sort of start to change and shift as you use the different mediums while someone's doing their marketing? Yes and no. I mean, the auditory is not just about the sound. It's also about words like resonate, ping, you know, all those words that have some form of auditory element to them, as opposed to, say, something that's clear or in terms of, do you feel me, would be more of a kinesthetic phrase. Does it make sense is more of the thinky bit, the cerebral bit. So if you just drop in a few of these words as you're going, I mean, I tend to, if I'm in a face-to-face presentation, I will say at the end, so does that make sense to you? Is that clear? Does it resonate with you? Did you get that? So I will trot out all 4 of them just to make sure that I've landed and get the feedback from them. And again, it's acutely watching your audience. What is it, particularly on a one-to-one, what is it that they've gone, yeah, where's the nod come? Where are the eyes lit up? It's that very clear understanding of reading nonverbals as well. So if they're on stage, if they're speaking one-to-one with someone where they can see them, if they're speaking in a Zoom room or a breakout room of some sort, having the conscious awareness to look at the audience and say, okay, where is it that they might lean in, or they might have that area of focus? Where is it that they might, pick a little energy of curiosity or something like that, where you can see if something's landing or if something's not landing. If they're just like, as soon as you say something, they start to drift off and you lose them. And keeping that as the internal feedback, right? So the internal feedback of like, okay, let's take some notes and say, okay, that worked, that didn't work, that might be something I could shift. Is that something that you'd recommend for your clients to consistently track?
Definitely. Yes, you reflect on it. Now, as I said, it's actually quite tricky to do in the moment, because in the moment you're wanting to keep going and remembering what you're going to say. And very often, if you can have somebody watching the audience on your behalf and taking notes, if it's a big group, it's difficult when you're in a Zoom room because we're hardwired for novelty. So if you've got a big gallery, like we have the serving circle, we've got a lot of people there. Somebody scratches their head and your eyes go over there. Somebody picks up something and your eyes go over there. So you're constantly dotting around. And at that point, being present is actually very difficult, because we are hardwired for this novelty, this change around. So as I said, if you can, I mean, with the Zoom calls, go back and watch the recording. Then you've got the opportunity, because the other thing is, when you're on a Zoom call, if you are giving eye contact, which is what I'm doing at the moment, I'm looking directly at the camera. I'm not looking at you, because if I look at you, I'm looking down. Okay. So if you're presenting on a Zoom call and you're giving eye contact, you're looking directly at the camera, you're not necessarily picking up what's going on at the time. So that's something to hold in tension. How are you going to do it? If you've got 2 or 3, it's quite easy, because you just put the central thing down so that the person that you're talking to is immediately under the camera, so it doesn't look as though it's too big a difference. But if I was looking over there, then it's a bit clearer that where is she? She's not talking to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Again,
that's something I can improve on, because my computer's big. So my computer's big, and I have a external camera on the top. So when I'm in the Zoom room, and there's 20, 30 people in there, the windows can be quite small, and so I'm always trying to shift the person who's speaking and shift their little Zoom box to the top. But even when I'm talking, I generally look around the room instead of at the camera, So that's something
But that's fine. If that works for you, then great. The issue is, I mean, in the collab calls, we're there for collaboration. It's not as though we're selling anything. If you're in a situation where you're providing training or there's a call to action, particularly at the end, then looking directly at the camera is really important because you're showing your presence. You're showing your, again, back to the credibility, showing that, yeah, I've got this. And you would be as well to come on board with this because I can give you so much of what you want.
Gotcha.
It's one of those fine lines between knowing the situation and what's going to work best for you. You can't necessarily do it in a Zoom call live, but as I said, you can go back afterwards, listen to what you're saying and scan. And you can maybe see when somebody's turned off or when somebody, as you say, has leaned in. And that's the data mining. That's where you write down the exact words.
Cool. It's
a slow process. But once you get hold of it, you can really see, yeah, that word resonates. That word resonates. That got a good reaction. Oh, that one didn't. Let's lose that.
Gotcha. What do you think? What do you think are some of the fears people have with their communication? Because I know there's so many people who struggle with this. If they're getting on a Zoom call and they're presenting or they're wanting to pitch something or they're just even wanting to explain who and what they are and what they do, there's a lot of there can be a lot of doubt and fears come up there. What are some of the fears that you've noticed from the people that you work with, and how do you help create that shift so that when they do that, they're more confident and calm?
Biggest fear is the fear of rejection. We also then have the fear of the imposter syndrome. Why would people listen to me? What if they don't like me? That fear of rejection is probably the biggest one. And that sits deep within the psyche. Not everybody's going to like you. And that's okay. Again, I go back to the ice cream thing. In terms of the imposter syndrome, what we think of as common sense, what's common sense to me is rocket science to you. And I forget that because my experience, what we often do, sweeping generalization here, is that we generalize. We think that my experience of life, you've done exactly the same. And of course, you know what I'm talking about. So why would I share it with you? Because you know the same thing. And we both know that ain't the case. You can have two people in the same situation, viewing things from a totally different perspective. So for as far as the imposter syndrome is concerned, and forgive me using a bit of jargon there, if any of your listeners, any of our listeners are not familiar with that, it's when you think, who's going to listen to me? I'm nothing special. But actually, as I said, my common sense, it could be somebody else's rocket science, and it's sharing that. So that's where I go to with the imposter syndrome. As I said, with the sense of rejection, potential rejection, not everybody is going to like you. And that's one of those life lessons which is hard to go for. But the thing is, it's not about you. It's about your audience. If you can get over your nerves because, well, they don't know what you're going to say. How do they know if you're going to get it right? They don't know what you're going to say. Only you do. And if you can develop that thinky feeling, a thinky look, if you lose your way, and this is actually statistics on this, they've done some research on this. If somebody pauses in the middle of a presentation, the longer they pause, the more intelligent they appear. How cool is that?
What if it's for like 20 minutes?
It's a little bit too much. You've got that. There's an optimum time, and you've also got the sort of thinky look. Because if you go plus the then it's a bit clear that you've lost your way. But if you, as I said, if you can develop that thinking pose, as long as what comes out of your mouth next is worth waiting for, nobody need know that under the surface you're paddling furiously. And that's certainly something that I cultivate with my clients.
Totally. I can feel when someone is presenting to have those skills and reminders to fall back on. If they aren't too clear or they lose their way, it can often help them just be more calm with realizing, oh, it doesn't need to be exactly the way my mind thinks it should be. It doesn't need to be this flawless presentation of just flow, but there can actually be pauses, and there can actually be different levels and depths and all those different things. I think that's really cool. So there's some things people
and actually,
can work
while we're
on.
on that subject, if I can, we're talking about the imposter syndrome. Very often in networking meetings, when somebody is telling you about what they do, they tend to tail off at the end. There could be a bit of, in English, it's the end of the sentence that carries the weight, that often carries the important stuff. And just because I know what I do, and if I'm coming to the serving circle week by week, I'm assuming that everybody in the serving circle knows what I do as well. That plus imposter syndrome often means that we lose the end of what people are saying, or we can lack the passion about it, particularly if it's something, if it's our pitch that we know so well, because I get bored with it. Yeah, but the other people haven't always heard. So when you are doing your pitch, if you will, add that passion in. I was on a networking meeting a couple of weeks ago when we had to say what we were doing, and then we'd have another question like, what did you have for tea last night? Or where are you going on your vacation? And the energy shift between the two things was palpable. And I was saying, now take that amount of passion into what you do and how you're describing it. And I was, oh, yeah, that's a good one. In fact, Tyson, I'm going to, if you don't mind, I'm going to pop that in as a quick video on the Serving Circle post this week.
Totally.
Just as a reminder to people that maintain the energy, maintain the passion.
Exactly. I think and people hear that in your voice, because when people hear that vibration, that energy, that frequency that's portrayed, that it sort of signifies that heart and brain, the heart and mind coherence, where what you're saying is exactly what you're feeling. It's what you're passionate about. It's your heart. I mean, when I talk about when I have my group coaching calls, and those calls, they can go for like 2.5 hours, and then the clients are leaving. I'm like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm not done here. And they find it funny, but for me, it's because I just love discussing these things, love coaching, love talking about it, and it's effortless. And so for that to be in your marketing, in your messaging, in your communication, from a place of heart, it doesn't need to be perfect. People, it can flow, and it can have all the personality involved as well. And I think that's what people can also fall back on, is realizing, oh, I just need to be me. As long as I'm me, and as long as I'm doing it from a place of authenticity, I can pile everything you're saying here in terms of those 7 pillars. I can pile all those in my reminders and just start to work through them. But as long as I'm me, those who are going to resonate. Those who aren't. And that relieves any of the fears and the objections and the nerves. Is that what you found?
Absolutely. Because as I said, it's not about me putting myself out there. It's about the message going back to the purpose. Why is it so important? Well, it's important because the people are wanting to hear this. Mm-hmm. They are who I'm focused on. Sorry, where's my hands? They are the people that I'm focused on. And it's not about me. It's all about them.
Mm. Wow. I think that's a reminder that is pretty consistent, because every fear is you inside you. Mm. But as soon as you say, hey, who am I here to help? Who am I here to serve? What difference am I here to make? You get outside yourself and into them. And when you're in them, that's when your action steps, your communication, your messaging is going to be more targeted, more enthusiastic, more passionate, because we light up when we're serving. We light up when we're on a mission, right? Mm. So that's important. So what do you think, in summarizing all this, what do you think are some of the key takeaways or questions people can ask themselves, or reminders they can have when they're working on their communication and working on their marketing each week?
Biggest thing is, why am I doing this and who am I doing it for? And what are they saying to themselves? Because if I can use those words to that person, they know that we've got that deep level of rapport.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that rapport, it's that connection that people want. Very often, I mean, was it Richard Branson was saying that people don't buy your what, they buy your why.
Mm.
I may have misheard that. It could have been somebody else. But people buy your why. They want to know, why is this important to you? Because if it's not important to you, your passion won't be there. And you may have a wonderful gizmo gadget. But if you're not passionate about it, so what? It's that head and heart connection. If the head and heart connection is there, you're in alignment, you're in integrity, it comes out in your voice. And I say voice, but I'm talking about communication in general, the whole 9 yards. And that's what I'm it's conscious communication.
Totally. Beautiful. Well, I know this is something that an area and a topic that everyone wants to work on, and something that people know they need to. So where can they find out more about you? I know you're going to put some links in the show notes as well. Where can they find out more about you, all about the work you're doing, and how they can benefit from this conscious communication?
Sure. Well, there's a Courageous Influential Speakers group on Facebook. It's an open group. Come on in, sign up, and just sort of join the group. And there are bits and tips and tricks that get popped in there every so often. And I did a 5-day challenge, August? No, it was June into July. Golly, it's a long time ago. And from there, I've also then created the Courageous Influential Speakers Academy. Now, that's the paid program. So there will be 2 groups. You won't be able to see the academy. It's not open. It's not an open source one. But that's for the folks that are in the academy. Now, that I'm opening for a 2-week free pass every quarter. So the next one is probably going to start. Well, we've got Christmas in the way. Nobody wants to do anything on the run up to Christmas because it's too much to consider. I will be doing some marketing around that, but we'll probably do that the last 2 weeks in January, because for those of you who are not Antipodean, Australia and New Zealand, the new year doesn't start till February, I've discovered. So we're starting the new year at the beginning of February. And that's where we'll bring in the new guys into the academy. So yes, there's this Courageous Influential Speakers group page on Facebook. Come in, take as much information as you want out of there. Feel free to join in. Please do. What are the situations that you're facing? Is there somebody else and or me who can support you with that? Get involved. I've also got a LinkedIn presence. Not as active as would be sensible. That's on my list of things to do to get more of a LinkedIn presence. I have a scheduling calendar. You can always pop me on there and just get in touch. Let's jump on a Zoom call, see what works for you. And we can, even if you don't sign up a discovery call, we can talk about where's the best thing, what are the tips and tricks I can give you immediately to improve on things.
Cool. Great. And anytime you can create just that slight tweak in your communication leads to a big difference. So I think those
ripple.
Yeah, you got it.
Ocean.
So anything else that's on your heart, anything else you want to share that would make this conversation feel complete?
Just the conscious communication thing. It's about not just opening your mouth and dribbling out what comes. Be conscious about who you're talking to, what's going to be the best way of speaking with them. It's back to the it'sallaboutthem.com.
Mm-hmm. Well, for everyone who's listening, I look forward to seeing the shifts in your marketing and in your messaging and in your communication when you start to implement some of these tips. It's been awesome. And like you said, that ripple effect will just create a big wave, because every single time you test and tweak, you get the feedback, and it's just this feedback loop time and time and time again of just mastering your communication until you nail that sort of the methodology and the framework and the verbiage where people just get it. They get it. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of the Serving Circle. Everyone, I'm going to put the links below so you can reach out to Wendy and grab some of the free resources and joining her Facebook group. You're going to love her energy and all her tips. So definitely jump on board. But Wendy, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Tyson. Great time. Thank you.